Have you ever stopped to think about the quiet corners of the internet? Today, we're diving into the psychology of something we all see but almost never talk about: digital invisibility.
I mean, really think about it for a second. The entire world of social media is built for us to post, to share, to comment, to react. And yet, for every single person who's actively posting, there are, tons of others who are just watching. So, what is really going on there? Why do so many people choose to stay silent online? Let's go look for some clues.
All right, to really get to the bottom of this, we kind of have to approach it like detectives. And our very first big clue is a psychological concept that, honestly, explains a lot about who we choose to be in the digital world. It's called a high privacy orientation. Now, this has nothing to do with being paranoid or, antisocial. Not at all. It's actually a deliberate preference. It's this deep-seated desire to have control over your personal information, to maintain these really clear boundaries between your private life and your public, digital one.
So what does this actually look like in the wild? Well, someone with a high privacy orientation is probably going to think really carefully about their digital footprint. They just value having personal space even when they're online. And yeah, they might share things, but it's usually with a really small, trusted group of friends. And here's the big one. They often find themselves consuming way more content than they ever create. Sound like anyone you know? Maybe even you?
Okay, so a preference for privacy is a huge part of the story, but it doesn't quite explain the whole silence thing. To really solve this puzzle, we need a second clue. And this one gets right to the heart of a very human question. Where do we get our sense of worth?
This really brings us to a fundamental split in how we see ourselves. So, on one side, you've got external validation. That's the worth that comes from other people's approval, the kind measured in likes and shares. But on the other side, there's self-validation. And that is all about internal satisfaction, what feels authentic and meaningful to you. The silent observer? They draw their value almost entirely from that second column.
So, when you put these two ideas together, the profile of the silent observer becomes crystal clear. It's a two-part mindset, right? First, you have the foundation, which is that high privacy orientation, that need for control over your digital space. And then, built on top of that, you have the structure of self-validation, where your personal worth just isn't measured by online engagement. These two things together, well, they create a complete psychological picture.
Okay, so now we understand the what and the why. But the real question is, so what? Why does any of this matter? Well, it matters because it allows us to completely reframe this whole conversation, to move away from this idea of being invisible online and toward the power of being intentional. And this right here, this is probably the single most important takeaway from our entire explainer today. Just let that sink in for a moment. Your presence, your value, your worth as a human being has absolutely nothing to do with how many likes you get. So instead of seeing online silence as some kind of negative thing, let's try to reframe it. What if it's a powerful sign of self-awareness, not social anxiety? It is a totally valid choice for protecting your mental well-being in what can be a very, very noisy digital world. It's a conscious decision to prioritize actually living your life over just performing it for an audience. In so many ways, choosing silence is a real act of digital mindfulness.
And that kind of leaves us with one final thought to chew on. We tend to think of silence as an absence of something, right? An empty space. But what if we've got that all wrong? What if online silence isn't empty at all, but is actually full of thought, full of intention, and full of a life that's being lived for oneself, not for a screen?